Every house tells a story. Some whisper of love, of warmth, of laughter echoing through open halls. Others remain silent, rotting slowly into the earth. But there are houses that never let go, places where doors lock on their own, where windows breathe with a life that isn't yours. Tonight, we enter one of them. A home where families vanished without trace, where neighbors still cross the street to avoid its shadow. A house that doesn't want you inside, yet once you enter, it will never let you leave. If stories like this haunt your imagination, subscribe to Night Whispers, where the shadows have a voice. The house was never supposed to be mine. That was the first thing I thought when I found the letter, folded neatly inside my mailbox, its envelope sealed with black wax. No return address, no stamp, just my name written in a hand so old-fashioned it looked like it belonged in a ledger from the 1800s. The paper smelled faintly of smoke, of dust, of something buried too long beneath the floorboards, that I should have thrown it away. I should have laughed, should have told myself it was some child's prank, a neighbor's twisted joke. But instead, I carried it inside and opened it at my kitchen table, where the sun was still spilling through the blinds in slanted, golden stripes. The letter was short. A single line. You are invited to claim what waits at Mill Creek Lane. No instructions, no explanation. Just that. And beneath it, a faint sketch of a door with a keyhole drawn in ink so dark it seemed to bleed through the page. For the rest of the day, I carried the weight of that sentence in my chest. I told myself I wouldn't go, that I was too smart to follow such nonsense. But that night, as I lay in bed listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the wall clock, and the wind against the siding, something changed. A whisper, soft as a breath against my ear, slid through the darkness. Come. I sat up, heart pounding. The house was silent again, but I knew what I had heard. And when I looked toward the window, I swore I saw a shadow drift across the glass, not outside, but inside the room with me. Sleep never came. By morning, the decision was made for me. I would go. Mill Creek Lane lay just past the edge of town, where the asphalt cracked into gravel and the street lamps stopped casting their light. I drove slowly, gravel popping under my tires, the forest pressing in from both sides. The air smelled of pine and rain-soaked earth. But beneath it all, there was something else, something faint and metallic, like rusted iron or old blood. When the house appeared, it was sudden, like a face pressed against glass. One moment the trees crowded the road, and the next, there it stood at the end of the lane. It was not abandoned. That was the first wrongness. The paint was white, not peeling. The shutters were green, not sagging. The windows gleamed as if freshly washed, and a porch light glowed faintly in the morning mist. But the grass was too still. The curtains didn't sway with the breeze. The house looked alive, but in a way no house should. I parked at the edge of the gravel, leaving the engine running, and stepped out. The silence hit me first. No birdsong, no rustle of leaves, only the faint buzz of the porch light. My shoes crunched against the stones as I approached the gate, and with each step, the air grew heavier, pressing down on my chest until breathing felt like swallowing water. The gate was unlocked. The path was swept clean. Someone or something wanted me here. On the porch, I paused. The boards didn't creak beneath my weight. My reflection stared back at me in the glass of the door, pale, uncertain, eyes wide. And then I saw it, a second reflection, just behind my left shoulder. A man tall, his face blurred, his hand resting against the glass. I spun. No one was there. When I turned back, the reflection was gone. But in its place, hanging from the brass doorknob, was AKEY. It was old, iron, heavy in my hand. And tied around it with a strip of faded ribbon was another note: every door must remain locked until midnight. The words made no sense, yet they filled me with a dread so sharp I could taste it. Still, I pressed the key into the lock. The door opened with no resistance, swinging inward on silent hinges. The air that spilled out was not stale, not moldy like abandoned houses I'd known. Instead, it was warm, scented faintly of wood polish and something sweet, like apple cider long forgotten in a cup. The hallway stretched before me, lined with family portraits in gilded frames, each face turned slightly away as though caught looking at something just beyond the painter's reach. The floor was spotless. The furniture gleamed. A grandfather clock ticked at the end of the hall, though its hands were frozen at 12 dot, and then came the sound a door closing. Somewhere upstairs I froze. My breath caught, and for the first time, I realized what the invitation truly meant. The house wasn't abandoned. It was waiting, and I had just stepped inside. The moment the door shut behind me, I realized how wrong the silence truly was. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was a silence so heavy it felt deliberate, like the walls themselves were listening, waiting for me to speak first. I stood in the foyer, gripping the iron key in my palm, my skin damp with sweat. The note tied to it still echoed in my head. Every door must remain locked until midnight. But locked from whom? From me? Or from something else inside these walls? The floorboards stretched before me like a stage, polished to a sheen that reflected the light of the chandelier above. That light flickered faintly, humming with electricity, even though I hadn't seen any power lines feeding into the house. The bulbs glowed a soft, yellow-white, steady, unblinking dot. I moved forward slowly, each step measured. The portraits along the hallway seemed to shift as I passed. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but the longer I looked, the more certain I became. Their eyes weren't painted straight ahead. They had been angled, deliberately, toward me. Every face in every frame watched. The grandfather clock ticked once. A single, hollow sound. I turned sharply, heart racing, but the hands were still frozen at 12. My voice came out as a whisper. Hello. The silence swallowed it whole. The kitchen lay at the end of the hall. Its linoleum floors were spotless, the counters polished, a bowl of fruit resting in the center of the table. Apples, pears, a cluster of grapes. Perfect. Untouched. But when I stepped closer, my stomach twisted. They weren't fresh. The skin of the apples was too shiny, the stems too brittle, the grapes hard as marbles beneath my fingertips. Not fruit at all, wax, and yet the faintest smell of rot lingered in the air, as though something had been left here too long. I turned back to the hallway. The note's warning pulsed in my mind. Every door must remain locked until midnight, but curiosity, like a thread pulled loose, tugged me forward. The first door was on my right. Its handle gleamed, brass polished so bright I could see my own reflection in it. My hand trembled as I pressed the key into the lock. The metal slid in perfectly, as though it had always belonged. When I turned it, the door opened without a sound. Inside was a parlor. A fire crackled in the hearth, logs burning steadily, but without heat. The chairs were arranged in a perfect circle, cushions plump, as though waiting for guests to arrive. A phonograph sat in the corner, its horn tilted slightly upward, and then, without warning, it began to play a soft scratch. A low hiss. Then a tune, faint and warped, filling the room with the sound of violins stretched too thin, of voices warped beyond recognition. My stomach clenched. The bowstrings scraped like fingernails, the voices whispering in a language I didn't understand. I staggered back, slammed the door shut, and locked it again, The house went quiet. My breath came ragged, sharp. My fingers dug into the iron key, its teeth biting into my palm. I should have left. Right then, I should have turned, sprinted down the hallway, and never looked back. But the house had its own gravity, a pull I couldn't resist. And deep down, I knew leaving wouldn't matter. If I walked away, it would only find me again. The second door stood at the base of the staircase. This one was heavier, its frame carved with strange designs, spirals that seemed to twist inward the longer I stared. When I pressed the key into its lock, it resisted, as though something on the other side pressed back. But the door gave way. The smell hit me first. Damp, sharp, metallic. The basement stairs descended into darkness, so thick my eyes could not pierce it. The single bulb above flickered, but refused to light fully, leaving only a weak orange glow at the top step. I leaned forward, trying to see, when a sound drifted up, footsteps, slow, heavy. Coming closer. I stumbled back, slammed the door shut, locked it tight, and pressed my weight against it. The footsteps stopped. Silence again. But when I pulled away, the faint outline of a handprint remained on the wood. Too large to be my own, the upstairs hallway stretched ahead, a staircase winding upward into shadow. I took the first step cautiously, the wood firm beneath my foot. The banister was smooth, polished, warm. Too warm. Like the skin of something living. Halfway up, the chandelier flickered again. The walls seemed to close in. And then I heard it. A voice. Faint. Female. Coming from the second floor. It spoke only one word. My name. I froze, my hand tightening around the banister. And no one knew I was here. No one could have followed. And yet, the voice had come soft and steady, as though from lips pressed right against the door of the room above. I should have turned back. I should have run. But my feet carried me upward, one step, then another, until I stood at the landing. The hallway stretched long and narrow, lined with doors on either side. Each locked, each waiting. At the far end, one stood open. A thin line of light spilled into the hall, golden and steady, glowing against the dark. The voice whispered again. My name, and with a sick certainty, I realized the truth. The house wasn't just waiting. It already knew me. The road into Hollow Town ended the way all forgotten highways do, abruptly, swallowed by weeds and silence. But there, just beyond the bend, a glow pulsed in the dark. Neon, the sign rose from the blackness like a beacon. A single word, written in buzzing red tubes. Eat. That was all. No name, no hours, no slogan. Just that single command, steady as a heartbeat. The diner stood beneath it, chrome siding gleaming in the pale wash of the sign. The glass windows were spotless, unbroken, reflecting the glow of the letters. The parking lot was empty, yet oil stains marked the pavement, fresh and dark as though cars had pulled in and out only moments. My pulse quickened as I stepped toward the door. The steel handle was cold, too cold, though the night air was mild. The door gave way without a sound, opening into a room that smelled faintly of coffee and burnt bacon. Inside, the diner was alive. Every booth was set. Coffee cups, saucers, plates with neatly folded napkins. The salt and pepper shakers were full, glinting under fluorescent lights that hummed faintly overhead. The jukebox in the corner flickered with colored bulbs, its song list glowing like it had just been updated. But the booths were empty. The stools along the counter gleamed, their vinyl cushions unworn. Behind the counter, the griddle sizzled faintly, smoke curling upward from something unseen, and then I heard it, the sound of silverware. I froze. From one of the booths, a fork scraped against a plate. slow, deliberate, as though someone was cutting into their meal. But the booth was empty. No one sat there. The plate itself was clean. My mouth went dry. Hello. My voice cracked against the walls, swallowed by the low hum of the lights. The scraping stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound itself. I moved toward the counter, my footsteps echoing on the tile floor. A row of pie domes glimmered beneath the glass. Cherry, apple, lemon meringue. Perfect slices, preserved as though time itself had been frozen around them. The smell of sugar and cinnamon drifted upward, sweet and inviting. I lifted one of the domes, but the pie beneath wasn't real. The crust was hard, brittle, hollow, like plaster shaped into the image of dessert. That's when the jukebox came alive. A sharp crackle of static filled the diner, and then a song played. A soft, old tune, the kind you'd hear in the 1950s, voices crooning about love and summer nights. But the record skipped, again and again. The same 3 words on a loop. Don't go home. Don't go home. Don't go home. I stumbled back, knocking into a stool. The sound cut off instantly. The jukebox went dark, its colored bulbs flickering once, then dying. The silence pressed in again, and then the sound of footsteps. They came from the kitchen. Slow, heavy. Moving toward the door that swung lazily behind the counter. I forced myself forward, the iron key slick in my hand. The note's warnings still burned in my mind. Every door must remain locked until midnight. But the kitchen door wasn't locked. It swung inward easily, as though expecting me. The kitchen was spotless. Counters gleamed, knives hung neatly on hooks, pots and pans stacked with military precision. A single pot sat on the stove, steam rising from its surface. I stepped closer, stomach twisting. Inside wasn't stew, or soup, or anything I recognized. The liquid was black, tar-like, bubbling slowly, releasing a stench like burnt hair and rusted iron. And then, reflected in its surface, I saw something that froze me where I stood. My own face. But wrong. The reflection smiled, even though my lips did not. Its eyes gleamed with a hunger I had never seen in myself. Slowly, deliberately, it raised its hand. And though I stood frozen in place, the reflection's hand lifted higher and higher until it pointed directly at me. I staggered back, heart hammering, nearly tripping over the tiled floor. The pot bubbled louder, the black liquid spilling over its edges, hissing as it hit the burners. The knives along the wall began to rattle, one by one, as though unseen hands brushed against them, and then the lights went out. The diner plunged into darkness. Only the faint glow of the neon sign outside pressed through the windows, painting everything in shades of blood red. I held my breath, straining to listen. The footsteps returned, but this time, they weren't coming from the kitchen. They were behind me, inside the diner. Slow, heavy. Moving across the tiled floor, closer with each step. I turned. My breath caught in my throat, and though the booths were empty, though the stools were bare, I knew with a certainty deeper than bone that I was no longer alone. The farther I walked into Hollow Town, the stranger the houses became. At first, they looked ordinary, the kind of homes you'd expect along a quiet suburban street. White siding, picket fences, porches with rocking chairs that swayed gently in the wind. But then I saw it. The house stood taller than the rest, its frame narrow and severe, as though it had been built to reach higher than it should. What stopped me cold wasn't its size, or even its crooked roofline. It was the windows. There were too many, dozens of them, crowding the walls in uneven rows, stacked on top of one another like staring eyes. Some were small, some wide, some tall and crooked. No two are the same. They covered the house entirely, replacing the siding until the entire structure seemed made of glass. Every single one was closed, curtains drawn tight. But behind the fabric, I swore I saw shape shift. The iron key in my hand pulsed like it knew where I needed to go. The note had warned me, every door must remain locked until midnight. But no one had said anything about windows. I stepped onto the porch. The wood groaned, but the door didn't resist. It opened soundlessly, as though it had been waiting. The air inside was colder, heavy with dust and old perfume. The floorboards stretched out into a long hallway, lined with mirrors on both sides. At least, I thought they were mirrors, until I realized they weren't. They were windows. Each one looked not outside, but inward, into rooms that should not have been there. Rooms that folded into one another like a maze. I pressed closer, my breath fogging the glass. I saw a child's bedroom. The wallpaper was peeling, the bed neatly made, the toys arranged in a perfect line. A mobile spun slowly above the bed, though no wind touched it. Another, I saw a library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books, all their spines blank, every one of them trembling as though something inside tried to escape. I stepped back, heart racing. Each window revealed another impossible room, a ballroom with chandeliers that swayed, a kitchen with knives that cut the air in slow circles, a study where a figure sat with its back to me, unmoving. I forced myself down the hallway. My footsteps echoed too loud, bouncing back from walls that seemed to stretch farther than they should. The deeper I went, the darker it became, until the windows were the only light left. Then, one of the curtains twitched. It was quick, but I saw it. A hand, pale, pressed against the glass from the other side. The fingers curled slowly, tapping once, twice, 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. I froze, every hair on my neck rising. The hand slid upward, leaving streaks on the glass, and then it vanished. I wanted to leave. Every part of me screamed to turn back, to run out the front door and never look at this place again. But the hallway pulled me forward. The air itself pressed against my back, pushing me deeper into the house. The floor tilted downward into a narrow stairwell. Each step creaked as I descended, the walls crowding close until my shoulders brushed against them. At the bottom, I found another door. This one was different. The wood was blackened, scarred, the handle cold as ice. I reached for it, but before I could turn the knob, I heard a sound. Breathing, slow, deliberate, ragged breaths coming from the other side of the door. I pressed my ear against it. The breaths matched mine for a moment, shallow and uneven, then grew deeper, heavier, as though whoever or whatever was behind the door had just noticed me. The key burned in my hand. My fingers shook as I slid it into the lock, though I knew I should not. The door clicked open. The room beyond wasn't a room at all. It was another hallway. Longer, darker, lined with even more windows, stretching farther than I could see. Every window was lit from within, casting pale yellow light onto the floor. And in each window, there was a face, dozens of them. Hundreds. They stared out at me, unblinking, pressed against the glass. Men, women, children. Some mouths were open, some closed, some frozen mid-scream. Their eyes followed me as I stepped inside, their breath fogging the panes in slow, synchronized rhythm. I stumbled backward, heart slamming in my chest. The faces pressed closer, their skin leaving wet marks on the glass. And then, in perfect unison, they all raised their hands. Tap, tap, tap. The sound rattled down the hallway, endless, deafening, growing faster, louder, until it became a roar of knocking fists and pounding palms. I turned and ran. The hallway stretched, lengthened, no matter how far I sprinted. My footsteps blurred, the faces slammed against the glass, the windows shuddered as though ready to burst, and then one did. The glass shattered outward. Shards flew like knives, slicing into the walls, scattering across the floor. From the broken frame, a hand reached through, pale, long-fingered, clawing at the air. Then another, and another. The faces pressed harder. More cracks splintered across the windows. One by one, they began to break. Hands, arms, shoulders forcing their way through, pulling at the air like they were clawing their way into this world. I sprinted back up the stairs, lungs burning. The hallway above tilted and warped, the windows bending inward as though the whole house wanted to swallow me. The front door loomed ahead, too far, impossibly far. I pushed, forced my legs to move faster, the sound of shattering glass exploding behind me. I reached the porch, stumbled into the night air, gasping. The house loomed in silence once again, its many windows reflecting the pale moonlight, but when I looked closer, my blood ran cold. Every single window now showed only one face, mine. The hollow town stretched quiet around me, the silence heavy as stone. After the house of windows, I didn't trust the streets anymore. Every building looked alive, waiting. Still, the iron key tugged at me, pulling me farther, like it knew where the next door was. That's when I heard it. A bell. The sound rolled across the empty streets, deep and resonant, though no church stood nearby. The note was long, metallic, carrying on the air until it faded into silence. Then it rang again, once, twice, 3 times. I followed the sound, my steps slow, cautious. It drew me toward the heart of the town, where the buildings pressed closer together, their shadows merging into one another. And there, rising above the rooftops, I saw it, the bell tower. It shouldn't have been there. I'd walked these streets already, I'd seen the skyline, and no such structure had existed before. Yet now it loomed, black stone against the pale night sky, its spire sharp as a blade. The clock face glowed faintly, though its hands spun too fast, revolving in frantic circles. I approached the entrance. The wooden doors were massive, iron-banded, and etched with strange symbols I couldn't decipher. My hand trembled as I pushed, and the doors groaned open with a sound like a dying animal. Inside, the air was colder. The scent of rust and mildew clung to the walls. A spiral staircase wound upward into darkness, the iron steps slick with condensation. Above, the bell tolled again, shaking the walls, sending dust raining down. I began to climb. Each step echoed, the sound rising like a heartbeat. My shadow warped against the stone walls, growing longer, thinner, stretching ahead of me as though something climbed faster than I did. Halfway up, I paused. The stairs vibrated. The metal trembled under my feet. And then I heard it, footsteps, not above me. Below, slow, heavy, deliberate. Something was climbing too. I pressed myself against the wall, holding my breath. The sound grew louder, closer, until it seemed only a few steps away. But when I looked down, the staircase stretched empty into the shadows. The air thickened. My chest tightened. The steps beneath me groaned as though bearing more weight than just mine. I forced myself upward, faster now, the ringing of the bell shaking the tower. My hands slipped on the railing, slick with cold, but I didn't stop. The higher I climbed, the heavier the air became, pressing on my lungs like stone. At last, I reached the top. The belfry opened into a cavernous space. The great bell hung in the center, blackened with age, its surface etched with cracks that glowed faintly red. Chains held it aloft, thick and rusted, swaying as though moved by an unseen wind. The sound up close was deafening. Each toll rattled the bones in my chest, making my vision blur, and then I noticed the ropes, dozens of them, stretching from the bell into the shadows. They didn't connect to a mechanism. They connected to figures. Hooded, cloaked shapes stood in a circle around the bell, their faces hidden, their hands gripping the ropes. With each motion, they pulled and the bell swayed, sending its thunderous cry across the night. I froze, too terrified to move. One of them turned. Slowly, deliberately, the hood slipped back just enough for me to see the face beneath. It was mine. I stared back, blank, lifeless, the skin pale and cracked like old porcelain. The figure smiled, and when it did, every other hooded shape turned as well. Dozens of my faces, all grinning, all pulling the ropes in unison. The bell roared. The force knocked me to my knees, the air shaking so violently it felt like the tower itself would collapse. I scrambled for the stairs, but the iron twisted, warping into shapes that led nowhere. The figures stepped closer. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, their faces stretching too wide, teeth too sharp. One reached out, fingers long and skeletal, brushing against my arm. The skin burned where it touched. I stumbled backward into the shadows, desperate for escape. The bell swung harder now, each toll faster, louder, the sound warping into a scream. My ears rang with it, blood rushing down my neck, my vision swimming red. And then I saw it. A door, small, crooked, half hidden behind the bell itself. The key in my pocket seared like fire, urging me forward. I lunged, ducking beneath the swaying mass of metal, the ropes whipping through the air as the hooded figures pulled harder. The door waited in the stone wall, its frame jagged, its handle slick with rust. The footsteps behind me thundered. The bell shrieked, the air burned. I shoved the key into the lock, twisting, praying, gasping. The door clicked. I pushed through, falling forward into darkness. Behind me, the bell tolled one final time, and then silence. The fall felt endless. My body tumbled through the dark, no walls, no floor, no air to stop me. Just weightlessness, silence, and the echo of that final bell. Then, with a jolt, I landed not hard, but gently, as if the darkness itself had caught me. I staggered to my feet. The air smelled different here, dry and brittle, like old paper and dust. My eyes adjusted to a dim glow, flickering from unseen candles. I was standing in a hall, the ceiling arched high above, ribbed with black beams, vanishing into shadow. The walls stretched endlessly on either side, covered not with wallpaper or stone, but with portraits. Hundreds of them. They watched me. Each painting was massive, framed in cracked gold or blackened wood. Their subjects sat rigid in chairs or stood stiff against faded backdrops, frozen in grim poses. Men in waistcoats, women in bonnets, children with toys clutched tight. Families lined up like they were waiting for judgment, but something was wrong with them. Their faces were too sharp, the eyes too real. The brushstrokes seemed to pulse when I looked too closely, and as I walked, I realized every set of eyes followed me. A chill pressed against my spine. I turned in place, scanning the rows, and then I saw it. One of the portraits was of me, not me as I stood now, but me at 10 years old, hair messy, shirt crooked, the exact way I looked in an old photograph my mother kept in a drawer. I stepped closer, trembling. The canvas seemed to breathe. My painted chest rose and fell, my lips twitched, and then, slowly, the boy in the frame smiled. I stumbled back, heart hammering. The smile didn't fade. I forced myself to keep moving. The portraits stretched on forever, the faces shifting as I passed. Some wept, some whispered. Some clawed at the edges of their frames like they wanted out, Halfway down the hall, I stopped again. Point one canvas showed a family seated around a dining table, their hands clasped. Their eyes were closed as if in prayer. But when I leaned closer, I saw faint scratches on the canvas, long claw marks, dragging downward. And then, one by one, their eyes opened. All of them, staring at me. I turned to run. The floor beneath me was marble, black-veined and cold, my footsteps slapping against it. The candles guttered with each movement, throwing shadows that twisted into strange shapes on the walls. The portraits grew worse the farther I went. Faces blurred, bodies warped, eyes melting into dark smears. One painting showed a man with no mouth, just a gaping hole where his jaw should have been. Another depicted a child with dozens of tiny hands pressed against the inside of the canvas, pushing outward. My breath caught. At the very end of the hall stood one last portrait, larger than the rest. It dominated the wall, stretching nearly floor to ceiling, its frame black iron instead of gold, and in it was me again, not the boy this time, not the man I was now. Something else. The figure in the painting wore my face, but its body was stretched thin, its limbs too long, its skin gray and cracked. The eyes burned faintly, red like embers, and the mouth hung half open, teeth too many, too sharp. As I stared, the figure leaned forward. The canvas bulged, straining as though it were no longer paint, but a window. The creature's hand pressed outward, the skin of the portrait rippling under its touch. I stepped back, shaking my head. The key in my pocket burned again, searing hot against my leg. I pulled it out, desperate, and to my shock, another door appeared. It was small, crooked, set directly into the base of the giant frame. Rust dripped from its hinges, pooling on the marble floor. Behind me, the portraits whispered in unison, a low murmur that grew louder, sharper, like thousands of voices scraping my skull. The painted version of me smiled wider, splitting its face open into something inhuman. Its arm pushed farther through the canvas, fingers stretching for me. I didn't wait. I jammed the key into the lock, my hands slick with sweat, my lungs burning. The whispers grew into screams. The marble shook. The iron frame rattled as though the creature was about to break free. The door opened with a shuddering groan. I hurled myself through, pulling it shut just as a hand scraped the air behind me. For a moment, I thought I'd escaped, but then I realized the whispering hadn't stopped. It was louder on this side, and it was whispering my name. The door slammed shut behind me, its echo rolling like thunder through the darkness. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My chest heaved, the whispers still tangled in my ears. Then the silence shifted. A breeze moved past me, cold, sharp, carrying the faint smell of rain on stone. I opened my eyes. I was standing in the middle of a street. It was night, but not black. Pale lamps glowed overhead, each one swinging gently though there was no wind. The cobblestones stretched into mist, neat rows of buildings pressed close on either side. Not houses, not shops exactly, but something in between. Their facades were too perfect, too clean. Windows reflected nothing, glass like blank eyes. I took a step. The sound echoed. Too loud, too sharp, bouncing back at me from every wall. I froze, listening. Another step. The same echo, but this time it didn't stop. It kept going, multiplying, as though dozens of unseen footsteps followed me. I spun around. The street behind me was empty. The lamp swayed. The mist shifted. I told myself it was a trick of the stone. Just sound. But when I stepped again, the echo rushed ahead, not behind. It ran into the mist like something alive, and then it laughed. Not loud, not cruel, just soft. A child's laugh, skipping along the cobblestones before fading into nothing. My hands shook. I kept walking. The buildings loomed closer the farther I went. Their doors were shut, their windows curtained, but I could feel the weight of them pressing down. Some carried signs above their entrances, faded letters I could barely read. A tailor, a library, a small theater, all the places you'd expect in a living town. But nothing moved inside. No light, no shadow, except once. I passed a bakery. Its window was clouded, coated in a film of dust. But when I leaned close, I saw handprints smeared across the glass from the inside. Tiny ones, dozens of them. The echo of footsteps quickened behind me. I turned, fists clenched, throat dry. The street was still empty, but something was closer now. I hurried on. The lamps overhead dimmed one by one, snuffed out as I passed, until only a thin glow remained behind me. The mist thickened, swirling around my legs. The cobblestones felt uneven under my shoes, shifting as though they resented my weight. The laughter returned. Not just one child this time. Many. It flitted from one building to the next, darting from corner to corner, always just ahead. I tried to convince myself it was only sound, only memory. But then a ball rolled out from the mist. It was red, scuffed, its paint peeling. It bumped against my shoe. I didn't touch it. The echo of a giggle swelled, circling me like a swarm. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A curtain in one of the buildings lifted, just slightly. A pale face stared out. Hollow eyes. Lips stitched shut. I stumbled back, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. The curtain dropped. The window was empty. I ran. The street stretched longer the faster I moved, buildings multiplying in the mist. I could hear the echoes chasing me dozens of feet, then hundreds, pounding in rhythm with mine. The laughter twisted, high and shrill, a chorus that grew sharper until it wasn't laughter at all, but screaming. The lamps ahead flickered, and through the mist, I saw it. A figure. It stood perfectly still at the center of the street. Tall, too tall, draped in a black coat that scraped the cobblestones. Its face was hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, its hands gloved and clasped around a crooked cane. I slowed, breath ragged, legs trembling. The echoes stopped. Silence pressed in, heavy as a coffin lid. The figure didn't move. I edged closer, step by step, until the mist peeled back enough to reveal its face. There was no face, just a mirror. A pane of glass, oval and perfect, set where its features should have been. My reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed, pale, lips trembling. Then the reflection smiled. I froze. My mouth hadn't moved, but the thing in the glass grinned, wide and cruel, teeth sharp as knives. The figure raised its cane. It tapped the cobblestones once. The sound cracked like a gunshot, splintering the silence. Behind me, every door on the street creaked open at once. The laughter poured out, deafening now, layered with whispers, cries, voices begging, mocking, pleading. Shadows spilled across the stones, racing toward me, clawing upward like hands reaching from graves. The faceless figure tilted its head, watching, waiting. My reflection grinned wider, its eyes gone black, and then the lamps died, all at once. Darkness swallowed the street whole, and the echoes kept running. The darkness pressed against me like wet cloth, smothering alive. I could hear the echoes racing still, hundreds of phantom feet slapping against stone, but I no longer knew if they belonged to me. Somewhere in that storm of noise, the laughter shifted into something deeper. A hum, a low vibration that rattled in my ribs. Then, through the black, a glow appeared, dim at first. Then brighter. A clock face. It rose above the mist, towering over the hollow town, Its circular face cracked and faded, its hands frozen at midnight. The tower loomed with impossible height, its stones slick with shadow, its windows glowing faintly from within. Each pane flickered as though something inside walked past them in circles, pacing, pacing, always pacing. I staggered toward it. Not because I wanted to, but because my body moved on its own. Drawn, pulled, as though the hum in my chest came from the tower itself, vibrating through my bones like a tuning fork. The closer I came, the louder it grew. The echoes faded, swallowed whole by that endless droning. My ears throbbed. My teeth ached. At the tower's base, a set of iron doors waited. Their surface was carved with symbols I couldn't read, twisting shapes that shifted when I looked at them too long. I pressed my hand against the metal. Cold burned into my skin, but the doors groaned and swung open. Inside, the air was damp and heavy. A spiral staircase wound upward, disappearing into shadow. Each step was narrow, uneven, worn smooth by countless feet. I placed one foot on the stone and felt the hum deepen, a second voice whispering beneath it. A pulse, a heartbeat. I climbed. The staircase seemed endless. My breath came in gasps, the air growing thinner, colder. The walls pressed close, damp with moisture, etched with faint scratches. Not writing, not carvings, just marks. Fingernails. Clawing upward in desperation. I kept climbing. Halfway up, I paused. The hum stopped. The silence was worse, and then I heard it. A tick. Slow. Deliberate. Tick. 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 It came from above, echoing down the spiral. My legs trembled, but I forced them to move. Step by step, I chased the sound. The higher I went, the louder it grew. Each tick thundered like a hammer. My skull vibrated with it. My vision blurred, but I didn't stop. The staircase ended in a wooden door, cracked down the middle, its surface slick with black stains. The ticking stopped. I pushed the door open. The room beyond was vast, hollow, the inside of the clock tower's crown. Gears loomed overhead, massive teeth grinding against one another with a slow, agonizing scrape. Chains dangled from the rafters, some empty, some swaying with strange weight, and in the center of the room stood the clock. Its face glowed from the inside, casting a pale, sickly light across the floor. The hands were no longer frozen. They moved, but not forward. They turned backward, grinding against the gears, dragging time itself in reverse. Each tick rattled the room. Each tick sent dust raining from the beams above. I stepped closer. My reflection appeared again, warped in the glass. But it wasn't just mine this time. Behind my reflection stood others, dozens, pale faces pressed against the glass from within. Hollow eyes, stitched mouths. They writhed silently, their hands clawing against the inside of the clock face, desperate to break free. My reflection smiled again. The hands jerked violently, slamming into place. Midnight, the chains rattled, something moved above me. A shape descended from the gears, slithering down the metal like liquid shadow. It dropped onto the floor with a soundless thud, rising slowly, unfolding into form. It was tall, twisted, its limbs impossibly long. Where its face should have been, another claw face stared back. Its hands spun wildly, blurring until they vanished altogether. The glass cracked with each breath it took. It tilted its head. The ticking stopped. Then came the chime. A single note. Low, shaking the tower from its foundations. The figures trapped inside the clock face screamed without sound, their stitched mouths straining. The chains rattled harder, shaking dust loose in waves. Gears ground against one another until sparks showered the room. The creature stepped toward me. Each movement sent a ripple through the air, bending space, bending time. The light warped. My breath froze. It raised its arm. One long, skeletal finger pointed at me. The chime sounded again. This time, the world buckled. The floor split beneath my feet. The walls bled shadow. My reflection burst from the glass, staggering forward, lips unsewn, eyes black with hunger. It reached for me. The creature turned its head. Slowly, patiently, and the hands on its face clicked forward 0.1 second. Just one dot and everything stopped. Time did not move. The world around me hung in silence, frozen mid-collapse. Dust floated in the air like suspended snow. The black reflection's hand lingered just inches from my face, unmoving, its eyes locked in eternal hunger. The clock-faced creature stood still, finger raised, its gears whirring beneath its chest like the faintest whisper of a heartbeat, and yet I was not frozen. I could breathe. I could move. The silence pressed against me like water, thick and suffocating, but I forced my legs to take a step. The stone floor cracked beneath my weight, splintering outward into an endless dark void. The hum returned. Not from the clock tower now, but from somewhere deeper, far beneath the surface of the hollow town. A vibration rising through my bones. Guiding me, the black reflection's eyes twitched. Its lips parted. The stitches unraveled, threads snapping one by one with a wet, tearing sound. I stumbled backward as its mouth opened, impossibly wide, jaw cracking, tongue curling into shapes I could not name. No sound came out, not a scream, not a word, just silence. And then the air rippled. The cracks in the floor split wide, spilling me downward into the void below. I fell through blackness, weightless, soundless, until stones slammed into my back. My vision blurred, my ribs ached, but I was alive. When I sat up, I realized where I was. A corridor, narrow, endless, carved from old stone. Its ceiling arched high above me, vanishing into shadows. Torches burned in iron brackets, their flames a sickly green, casting warped silhouettes across the walls. Each torch hissed softly as though whispering secrets, and along the corridor, on either side, stood doors, hundreds of them, tall, short, wooden, iron, some ancient, rotted with age, others pristine, gleaming with polished brass handles. Each one different, each one wrong. The handles twitched, knobs turning on their own. Some doors rattled violently, others seeped smoke from their cracks. A few whispered my name, and at the far end of the corridor stood a figure, tall, still, waiting. It wore a cloak of black fabric that trailed across the floor like smoke. Its hands, pale and long-fingered, rested upon a ring of keys slung across its waist. The keys clinked softly, the only sound in the suffocating silence. Its face was hidden beneath a mask, bone white, featureless, save for a mouth carved into a permanent frown. The mask tilted as I rose unsteadily to my feet. The figure spoke. Its voice was neither male nor female, neither loud nor quiet. It vibrated within me, a resonance I felt in my chest more than I heard. You do not belong here. My throat tightened. I wanted to speak, but the words caught. Still, my voice came, broken, trembling. Where is here? The keeper's head tilted again. Its hand slid across the keys at its waist, lingering on one in particular, long, black, jagged. This is where all doors lead. This is where all echoes end. The corridor groaned. Several doors shuddered violently, chains rattling on their frames. One burst open an inch, spilling shadow that writhed and clawed before slamming shut again. The keeper stepped forward, the torches dimming with each motion. You have walked where you were not invited. You have seen what you should not. I stumbled back. The doors closest to me rattled louder, whispers seeping from beneath them. Some begged for help. Others laughed softly, cruelly. The keeper stopped. Now, it said, "You must choose." It lifted a long, pale hand and gestured. The corridor shook. 3 doors swung wide in unison, their insides glowing faintly, each in a different color. The first glowed red. Inside, I saw fire. A house burning endlessly, figures writhing in the windows, their faces pressed against the glass. The second glowed blue. A lake stretched into infinity, its surface smooth as glass. Beneath it, pale hands reached upward, dozens, hundreds, pressing against the water's skin. The third glowed green. A forest loomed, silent, endless, its trees twisted and alive, their roots coiling like serpents. The keeper's voice lowered, soft as a sigh. One leads to truth. One leads to silence. One leads to nothing at all. The keys at its waist jingled. The torches flickered. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. How do I choose? I whispered. The mask tilted again. The carved frown did not move, but I felt it smile behind it. You already have. The red door slammed shut. The blue one faded to black. Only the green remained, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The keeper stepped aside. The corridor grew colder. The whispers behind the other doors turned frantic, begging, screaming, clawing. My hands trembled, but my legs carried me forward. Step by step, I neared the green glow. The keeper did not move. It only spoke one final time as I placed my hand on the doorframe. When you open it, it will not close again. The hinges creaked. The green light swallowed me, and the corridor was gone. The door opened with a breath, not the groan of wood, not the creak of hinges, but the soft exhale of something alive. The green glow spilled outward, thick and damp, curling around my feet like fog. I hesitated at the threshold, my hand shaking against the frame. Behind me, the corridor had dissolved. The keeper was gone. The torches were gone, only the door remained, and so I stepped through. The forest swallowed me whole. It was not like the forests I had known, not like the woods that bordered towns and highways. The trees here rose impossibly high, their trunks pale as bone, their branches reaching into black skies without stars. The ground was soft, not with grass, but with ash. My footsteps left no sound. The air was heavy with the scent of rot. I moved deeper. The trees leaned inward as I passed, their bark twisting into faint shapes. Faces, eyes, some open, some closed. Their mouths whispered as I brushed by, syllables too faint to understand, though my name echoed again and again among them. I tried to turn back, but the door was gone. Only trees, only whispers. The green glow pulsed faintly, far ahead, like a lantern swaying deeper in the woods. It beckoned. I followed. Minutes stretched into hours, or perhaps it was only seconds. The forest had no sense of time. The more I walked, the more the trees leaned closer, their faces more defined. Some wept silently, their tears dripping sap that glowed faintly. Others smiled, jagged and cruel. One tree cracked open as I passed, a pale hand thrusting outward before curling back into the hollow with a hiss. I stumbled, heart hammering, but the glow pulled me on. At last, the trees thinned. The glow came from a clearing, and in the center of the clearing stood a house. It was not a cabin, not a hut, but a house I knew. My house. The porch sagged, the windows shuttered, the roof bent with years of storms, but it was mine. The same crooked step I had tripped on as a child, the same wind chimes that had hung by the door. They swayed softly, though no wind blew. My chest tightened. This wasn't possible. The house I had grown up in had burned years ago, but here it stood, whole, waiting. The green glow spilled from its windows, pooling across the ground like liquid light. The front door was ajar, breathing faintly, just as the door to the forest had. I approached slowly. My hand brushed the railing of the porch, the same splintered what I remembered. My throat ached with the ghost of childhood laughter, of dinners by candlelight, of a mother's lullaby drifting from upstairs, and then the door whispered, not the house, not the trees, the door itself. Its frame shivered as a voice slipped through the cracks. Welcome back. My breath hitched. The door opened wider on its own. Inside, the glow was blinding. I stepped across the threshold, and the house swallowed me. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, the walls bending and breathing, wallpaper shifting like skin. Portraits lined the corridor, not of my family, but of me. Every age, every expression. Me as a child, me as a teenager, me as I was now, stepping into this house of echoes. My footsteps echoed, though the floor was soft, spongy. The portraits whispered as I passed. Some turned their heads to follow me. At the end of the hallway, a staircase rose into darkness. The green glow seeped down from above, pooling on each step. The air thickened until every breath felt like swallowing glass. I climbed. The stairs groaned, each one a heartbeat, until I reached the landing. The door to my childhood bedroom waited there. The same chipped paint, the same sticker I had pressed to it when I was 6 years old, and from inside came the glow and a sound, breathing, slow, steady, patient. I pressed my hand to the knob. It was warm, pulsing faintly, like skin. My throat closed as I pushed. The door opened. The room was empty, not of objects, no, it was full. My bed, my desk, the shelves of books. Every toy, every detail preserved perfectly. The green glow seeped from the walls, veins of light threading through the plaster, and on the bed sat someone. Not something. Someone. It was me, not as I was, but as I had been. A child, 8 years old. My legs swinging from the mattress, my hands folded neatly in my lap. My eyes lifted slowly to meet my own, and when I spoke, both voices came. The child's, mine, twinned, echoed. You should not have opened the door. The green glow surged, flooding the room, drowning the walls, the ceiling, the bed. My body split, my voice fractured, the world dissolved into endless light, and then silence. No house, no forest, no keeper, only a single door before me, tall, black, seamless, waiting. Behind me, footsteps echoed. The keeper's voice returned, low and final. This is the last door. The black door shuddered, its frame vibrating with a heartbeat I could feel in my bones. My hand rose, trembling, not by my will, but by something greater. Something that had guided me from the highway, through the diner, into the tower, and now here. I touched the door. It opened, and there was nothing. Not darkness, not light, nothing. The kind of nothing that devours sound, thought, memory. The kind of nothing you never return from. As I stepped through, the door whispered shut behind me, and the hollow town waited.